So let's move on to the main event between Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns. And Tyron Woodley has a lot to prove in this fight because he's coming off of a loss to Kamaru Usman, right? And it wasn't just a loss; it was lopsided, man. And in a fight where a lot of people accused Woodley of looking like he didn't really want to be there, and I mean he didn't really have a lot to offer Kamaru Usman. Like he didn't really do anything to change the narrative of the fight, and he just you can't say he was accepting it because that's not fair, right? But it just like didn't seem like all the energy was there to really fight back, and everybody said he looked flat. So this was a big fight for him, and he's coming in against, at the time, the number 6 ranked guy in the world who's streaking through the welterweight division right now. I think after the win last night, Gilbert Burns just increased his win streak to 6. Might be 5, but I think it's 6 now. And I mean, when you beat the number 1 ranked guy in the world and the former welterweight champion, and you do it in the fashion that Gilbert Burns did it, I mean, hurt Woodley in the first round and then dominated every round thereafter. I think the first round was probably a 10-8 for Burns, and then you dominate every round thereafter. I mean, you're doing a lot for your case at the welterweight championship. Like, you're doing a lot for your... It's hard to deny that Gilbert Burns is ready for a title shot. Like, I think he is. I think that what you saw from him last night was a world championship caliber performance, and his jiu-jitsu was just scary because he's got that he's a world champion jiu-jitsu player, man, and his striking has been looking phenomenal, and every time he steps into the octagon, it just gets better and better and better. So, and this is, again, though, looking at this fight and you think about the Usman fight, it doesn't seem like Woodley's head is all there. I think he goes into the fight well prepared. I think he's feeling good, and then he faces adversity in the first round, right? I think he goes out in the second, and it seems like he kind of recenters himself. He's firing off the right hand. He connects with it a couple times, and you go, oh, yeah, you got to remember that Woodley still has that, right? He has that fucking right hand that could end the fight at any moment. But second round wears on. Gilbert Burns gets a takedown, just starts beating on him and wearing on him, and at that point, you've got to be thinking, okay, we've got to win the next 3 rounds because we definitely lost the first 2, and the first round might have been a 10-8. You've got to be thinking that Woodley for sure has to win the next 3, and a finish would even be preferable. But as the third round wears on, again, Gilbert's able to push Woodley back against the fence and just implement his game plan, keeping volume in his face, mixing in leg kicks, had a more versatile striking attack than Woodley. And he was able to keep him backing up. And then when the fourth and fifth round came around, it really felt like Woodley just wasn't there. It felt like he lacked a sense of urgency to go out and win the fight. And I mean, don't get me wrong. When you're getting backed up and you're getting beaten up by a guy like Gilbert Burns, who is, like I said, a world jiu-jitsu champion, has great striking. It's much improved. He's applying pressure. There's not a lot of openings for you. You've landed the right hand and hasn't, the openings for the right hand haven't been there all fight. It's like Woodley, in that situation, though, when you're down 3 rounds and you're a professional fighter, and I mean, it's easy to sit here from my perspective and say this, right? And you have to go out and do more. If you want to win that fight and you're Tyron Woodley, you have to go out and do more. And to me, what it looked like is that Woodley was waiting, from my perspective, watching through a fucking TV screen. I'm not Tyron Woodley. I'm not his coaches. Only they really know what's going on. And, really only Woodley knows what's going on in his head. But they have a better feel for everything than I do, right? But from my perspective, it looked like Woodley just wanted the fight to be over. Like, he just kind of wanted it to end and, almost I don't want to say accept the defeat, but it didn't seem like he was overly excited about taking big risks and engaging and picking up a win, or he would have done it, right? There was hesitancy there. And you got to keep in mind with Tyron Woodley that he's nearly 40 years old. I mean, he's been in the UFC for a while. And I think the main difference maker in this fight, and I think that Woodley, like I said, early on he looked better, and I think that he felt like he had a chance, and as it wore on, I think he just kind of felt like he wasn't able to find any success, and he seemed confused. He seemed hesitant, and I mean, granted, that could all be due to Gilbert Burns just coming in and having an excellent game plan and not stopping the pressure, right? But I really think that what you saw was a guy in Gilbert Burns who was hungry, who wanted it really fucking bad, who went in, who kept the pressure on, who had that mentality just like Usman did when he challenged Woodley for the title. Woodley's fighting these guys who are hungry and who the only thing they care about is winning a world title. They care about being the best in the world. And you were just, yes, you're Tyron Woodley, and yes, you have knockout power, and yes, you're a legend in the division and in the UFC and in the sport of MMA, but you're also a roadblock. And they're looking at you that way. And they're thinking about running through you. And their only thoughts right now are on winning a world championship. It's evident when guys are doing that too, because their performances just speak volumes about how much effort they're putting into their camp and their training. Woodley is a guy who I think he's got this rap stuff going on, and he's very into like that whole culture and stuff. And I think that his headspace is just elsewhere. I think he thinks about different things. I think he knows retirement is coming relatively soon at some point. It's coming down the road, man. And he's probably thinking to himself, man, I might have other avenues after this, things that I want to go do and that I want to go pursue. And I'm in here fighting against guys who the only fucking thing they're thinking about is winning a world title. It's hard to stay competitive against those guys because, like I said, this is all that they want. And I think that's kind of what you saw more than anything last night, is that it was a young, hungry, violent Gilbert Burns coming through and trying to make a statement. And Woodley, you know, when he wasn't able to implement his game plan, that wasn't going his way. I think, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what's going on in his head, but it didn't seem like a guy who was desperate to win a fight in rounds 4 and 5. It didn't seem like he was desperate and willing to take chances to win that fight. So I don't know. And you got to wonder what they're going to do with Woodley next, just because I think a matchup against a guy like Colby Covington is a terrible idea, because Woodley has a lot to think about. He's just coming off. There's going to be a lot of things that he's going to have to consider. But if you want to match him up against one of the top contenders, man, I'm not sure Colby Covington or like Leon Edwards is the answer. Guys who do, and especially Colby Covington with his volume, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that for Woodley right now. He's got to fight somebody like maybe ranked within the top 5, but fight against one of those guys up top right now, man, I wouldn't do that. I don't think it would be a smart move for the UFC or, the career of Woodley. Not that he could, Woodley has that right hand and the power, and he's a world-class It's not that he can't beat any of those guys on any given night. I'm just saying, coming off 2 losses in a row, do you really want to fight a guy like Colby Covington, who has immense wrestling pressure, and like it seems like a bad stylistic matchup, at least at this point in Woodley's career, and it's late in his career? I don't think so, man. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Tyron Woodley now. And again, Gilbert Burns just kind of shook up the 170-pound division and called out. He said he wants to fight for the title against his teammate Kamaru Usman. So, man, it's going to be interesting there, because you got Jorge Masvidal up top, and then you got guys that people forget about like Santiago Ponzinibbio, who've been hurt for the past 2 years, but he's riding like a 7-fight win streak right now. 170 is interesting, man. Really interesting. And like I said, Leon Edwards, there's a lot of guys in there that are ready to challenge for the title. And it's like, I think that the top 5 on any given night, any one of them might be able to beat each other. So it makes welterweight really interesting right now. So we'll see, man. We'll see what they do with Burns. He's going to end up fighting one of the top guys. I don't know if he'll end up fighting Usman, but he's going to get a shot at somebody like a Colby or a Leon Edwards at the very least. And it'll be a title contender bout, I'd imagine. Because like I said, Woodley ranked number 1 in the world at the time, and he beat him pretty handily. So impressive victory for Burns. Again, don't want to take away from how impressive Burns' victory was, but when rounds 4 and 5 roll around and you can just kind of see the look in Woodley's eyes that he's not there, you got to question about like what's his motivation to go in there and put it on the line in order to win. But great. Obviously he stepped in there, so he's willing to put it on the line in that sense. But when you're down in a fight, you got to be able to take chances, man, or you can't just accept it. Especially at this level when you got guys like I said, like Burns, who aren't their only goal is to blitz through you.